Yo, how's it going, my G's? I did a post recently on Instagram and Patreon, which was about my 10 commandments for music production, D&B specifically, but it doesn't have to be D&B. So I just thought I'd go over them again and explain them all in a little bit more detail. So number 1, we have make music for the purpose of spreading joy into the world. Now, yeah, maybe a bit hippie, but never lose sight of the main. For me, the main reason to make music, to evoke some kind of emotion, hopefully positive one. But yeah, the idea is, to impact people. When you listen to music you really like, you get a great feeling. It makes you feel good, So that's the reason, that's the main reason to create music, is to make other people feel good, in my opinion. So never lose sight of the main goal. Number 2, never compare yourself to others and focus on expressing yourself. Easier said than done, but we'll always fall into the trap from time to time when you compare yourself to someone else and you think you're not as good. This is completely normal. Everyone has this problem, so you're not the only one. You think you're that special, don't you? Basically, we all have this feeling, but it's our decision at the end of the day if we want to entertain it or not. So you can have that thought where you start comparing yourself to someone else, but you don't have to entertain that thought. You can appreciate someone else's work and really admire it, and then move on and just continue to express yourself. So anyway, number 3, don't get lost in science or maths behind the music and embrace imperfections. I see this a lot. People always ask me about, how do I master this for this specific streaming platform, or what about the Luffs, what about the Lemmings? These are like really prominent questions at the forefront of people's minds, but it's completely taking away the whole kind of aspect of making music that is supposed to be imperfect, and you're trying to quantify it and get the science right. Just kind of it just takes away from the natural songwriting process, so don't focus too much on that, and don't worry about if it's not perfect. The good thing about music is that the fact that it's imperfect. So number 4, focus on narrative and vibe above all. Strive for sound quality and loudness after. So a little bit similar, but yeah, it's better to have a song that has a really great sort of progression or a great sense of story in it, or that just has a really nice vibe and a really nice flow, and providing that you make the sound quality to the best of your ability and make it sort of as loud without losing the dynamics as you possibly can, but never lose the kind of underlying purpose, is that the vibe and the flow and the narrative is literally, the priority always. So, you can have a great song that the mix down or the master might not be completely spot on or perfect, but we still listen to this song on repeat because of the vibe that it has and the emotion that it kind of evokes. So always focus on that first, and then just do your best afterwards with the quality. Number 5, treat all the main elements in your song like evolving characters in a great movie. So this helps a lot when I see people struggling with, how do I write a good intro, or how do I transition the drop to the intro, and vice versa. And yeah, I think if you think about your track as a film, as a story, you have your main characters. They're already in the film from the beginning. They go through a progression, they evolve over time, and so by using resampling and things like that, you can focus on what are your key sort of characteristic sounds in your track, and reuse them and stretch them and automate them and change them in a way over the course of the whole song, so it feels like they're a part of the story and they're progressing things nicely. I'm sorry if it's a bit windy on this video, because it's a bit of a windy day today. Anyway, number 6 then, Whether it's micro or macro, make sure there is a unique concept behind each song. So one of the quickest ways that I lose motivation to finish a track is because I don't have a real sort of idea or concept behind it. You know, it's all well and good having a really cool beat, a really sick bass line, and just thinking about, you know, just making a banger. But I find that gets really boring really quickly, and what I try to do is put a little concept into every song, and even if it's macro or micro. So back in the day, I used to have very big macro concepts, like I wanted to portray the sound of George Orwell's 1984 in a song, or I wanted to portray the idea of government surveillance in a track. And it doesn't have to be something so dystopian or macro. Like my newest release, Flow, it was just about a micro concept of exploring water textures in sound and how they can sort of progress the narrative. So yeah, think about things in terms of having a concept, and even if it's a small and simple one, it's better than nothing. Yeah. So anyway, next, number 7, do not be afraid to share your work, for we learn best through honest feedback. So there's 2 things you can do. You can either not share your song because you're scared and never grow, or you can risk having your your ego or self-perception affected, perhaps, and grow. So what do you want to do? Do you want to stay sort of stagnant and not really develop your sound as quickly or as effectively as you could? And there's a lovely lady mowing the lawn here, so it's going to get a bit loud for a second on my little stroll here. Typical. But what are you going to do? Are you going to give yourself the opportunity to grow with a little bit of pain to your self-perception when someone gives you a piece of feedback that maybe is not what you wanted to hear? Or are you just going to stagnate? You know, so never be afraid to share your work. Number 8, give focus to the lead elements in your mix down so the listener can enjoy them properly. So the key is always with the mid-range. You know, the magic is in the mid-range, and you always get the chance to showcase one particular element or particular lead and give it priority in the mid-range. And it's better to have one main element as the key focus during a particular moment in time in your song than it is to, for example, have a bunch of different sounds all competing with each other and causing a bit of a sort of blur, and the listener doesn't really know which one to focus on. So you've got to make it easy for the listener and give focus always to the main element that's going on in that particular moment in time in the song. Obviously you can change the spotlight on what the lead element is, but there should always be one in mind. Okay, then not finally, but almost finally, number 9, treat each song as its own asset and do not be attached to its public reception or success. So I learned a little bit about investing recently, and so I think of it in a little bit of a investment or financial lens often. Although the purpose of a song is not necessarily to make money from it, you can still treat it as a digital asset. And in that regard, if you have one song is, say, one asset, you know, you don't have to be so attached to it if it doesn't do well. It's kind of like picking stocks in the stock market. You know, people always say you need to have like a well diversified portfolio. You know, so if one stock doesn't do well, or one asset doesn't do well, maybe another one will. So don't get too attached to one particular song or asset. Okay. And so you know, for me, I don't judge an artist based on the fact that every song they make is my favorite or it's perfect. I pick and choose the songs that I like and I listen to those. And I think most people do that as well these days. So if one particular song doesn't land with somebody, then another one may well. So don't worry so much about that. Number 10, finally then, is always prioritize the human voice, for this is the most relatable sound in the sonic palette. So yeah, something I often hear on some of the mentorship sessions that I do is people will use vocals, but it's like they almost feel like they're afraid to really give it all the priority and clarity that it deserves. And when you try to sort of blend in a vocal in the background, or sort of mask it and put it somewhere like kind of in the back of the mix, what basically you're doing is you're making it difficult for the listener, who is a human, to properly hear and clearly hear the human voice. And it's the sound that our ears obviously pick up on the most and are drawn to the most out of any sound, because it's the human voice and we're humans, right? So in that regard, it doesn't really make sense to muffle or not prioritize the human voice. Of course, there's certain situations where you want to have it as an effect and just kind of mangle it and confuse the listener a little bit on purpose. But unless you're like really on purposely trying to do that, you should always focus on prioritizing the singer or rapper or the human voice in general in your song, to let the listener relate to it and relate to the track as a whole more. So those are the 10 commandments, and these just kind of flowed out of me as I was writing them. I just wrote them all in one go. I didn't really stop to think about them too much. So I mean, they are subject to change in the future perhaps, but in my opinion they're pretty strong. So if you check over these, there's a post on my Patreon which is free to look at. I've got a few posts on there which are free, so you don't have to pay to join it, but there's a few free things on there as well. It's basically just like a platform where I'll share some music stuff often, and it doesn't have to be necessarily like for paid subscription. There's a few free things on there, like I said, so you can check over them in that. And yeah, if you use those, maybe one or two resonate with you more than others, and maybe one or two of them change your mindset a little bit. But yeah, if you look, in my opinion, using those will help you like rebalance your focus on what it is you're trying to do when you're producing and making good music. So hope that helps some of you guys. Peace out, much love, have a wicked day. Cheers.